Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one I'd like to talk about the various different Garchomps in GLC. Now this video is also serving as a bit of a test run, so if you'd like to see other Pokemon in this style of video or format, then please do let me know, and I'll happily do a few more in the future. But yeah, we're going to do Garchomp today. So what is GLC? For those of you who need a quick recap, or you just want I guess a bit of an idea of what GLC is if you've never heard of it. So it's a single prize only, no rule box format. So something like a Radiant, for example, is a single prize Pokemon, but it does have a rule box in that you can only play one in your deck, which is kind of ironic actually because GLC is singleton anyway. But yeah, Radiants are not allowed. It's just Pokemon without a rule box. It is singleton, like we just mentioned, except basic energy. So you can have as many basic energy as you want. Otherwise, being limited to just a single basic energy might be a wee bit tricky. But you can only play one type per deck, and that's kind of like the major rule of GLC, And it does play a big factor into Garchomp because they're both fighting and dragon type Garchomps, which we'll talk about in this video. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So just looking at some fighting support, because I'm sort of going to assume that some players who like the idea of playing Garchomp in GLC will have to choose between either fighting or dragon. So I just thought I'd go over some support options for both fighting and dragon Garchomps. So as for the Gabites, I think both of these Gabites have their uses. Like the Sand Tomb one isn't terrible. Like it does stop things like Jirachi, I would say, from like retreating and whatnot. You could also stop like Comfey or just any Pokemon in general with a Float Stone, which is quite nice. However, the Ascension Gabite is also really nice, and you can use Slash if you really wanted to. But yeah, either Gabite is fine, to be honest. I don't think you're losing out on too much by not having the Ascension one, simply because if you're trying to get Garchomp out quickly, you probably need the Rare Candy. And typically, attacks like Ascension are a bit risky to use anyways, because of course your opponent can then swing into your Garchomp and get the first hit, which isn't like super ideal in most situations. So yeah, that's kind of annoying. But either way, cool options. Then we have the Lucario, which is a bit of a double-edged sword because there is another fighting type Lucario, which is definitely a lot stronger, the one from Brilliant Stars with the Roaring Resolve ability. That is a very, very strong ability on Lucario, and just a very, very strong Lucario full stop. So it's kind of hard to justify playing another Lucario, but if you really want to make your deck all about Garchomp and just, focusing on Garchomp as much as you possibly can, then this Lucario is quite a nice option. It has the ability Pregnative Aura. Yeah, I'm useless at pronunciations, as long-term viewers of the channel might realize by now. But yeah, that ability name says once in your turn, if you have a Garchomp in play, you may search your deck for any card that you like, which is fantastic in a format where you can only play one-offs of Pokemon and trainers. So yeah, definitely a very strong Lucario nonetheless. And then the last card that we can talk about for fighting type support is Martial Arts Dojo, which just say the attacks of your non-Ultra Beast Pokemon that have any basic fighting energy attached to them do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, which is quite nice, just a little bit of a modifier. However, if you're behind on prizes, your attacks do plus 40 damage instead, which is really nice. So it just means that your Garchomps are doing just a wee bit more damage, which is quite nice. So yeah, Martial Arts Dojo, definitely a strong card. Then we can just quickly glance over some Dragon-type support. The Gabites are, well, I feel like there's a lot less competition as to which Gabite you should probably be playing. But either way, the Gabite on the left here with the ability Dragon Call is just amazing. Being able to find any Dragon Pokemon from your deck, including Garchomp. So yeah, that Gabite is a very, very, very strong card in of its own right. So yeah. However, if you can't get a hold of that for whatever reason, it's too awkward to find online, or you don't know anyone that's willing to trade one, then of course the Ascension Gabite is still there. However, the Gabite on the left is definitely a lot stronger. Also worth mentioning is Double Dragon Energy, because a lot of the Dragon-type Garchomps, except one, I think, all take at least 2 energy. Like, they don't take 3 energy, which is kind of important because fighting types don't really have great energy acceleration at the minute as of recording this video. So, that is something to bear in mind. So, yeah, this will definitely help with those annoying attack costs. But yeah, just getting into the first Garchomp that I wanted to talk about. This was a Plasma Freeze Garchomp, and it has 2 attacks, Match Cut and Dragon Blade. Sadly, this Garchomp is very outclassed by the one from Brilliant Stars, and this one's also a bit more awkward to get a hold of. So ultimately, just a wee bit more annoying across the board. However, if you do love the artwork, and I can sympathize with that greatly because it is a gold artwork, it is very, very nice, then you could run this Garchomp. Now, I'm not saying it's a great Garchomp, however, if you just want some context, I'm pretty sure the one from... Is it the one from Brilliant Stars that does 160? Yeah, I think it's the one from Brilliant Stars does 160 for a water fighting energy, and then Mills 2, so it's just like a strictly better card overall. But yeah, this Garchomp, it's still very nice, it's still very cool and all the rest of it, but not having free retreat, not having like anything that unique to offer, yeah, sadly a bit weak, and an example of power creep over the years. The next Garchomp is arguably even worse than the one we just looked at, which is a bit weird, but yeah, this Garchomp isn't anything special. Like, you could definitely play this Garchomp if you don't have the fighting type ones that we'll talk about in a minute. However, this one is still... it's all right in some situations. Like, it's weirdly not terrible, just because Turbo Assault doing 60 and accelerating 1 energy can help with energy, because we have mentioned, previously that fighting type Pokemon really, really struggle with energy acceleration. However, the main problem with this Garchomp is the fact that you're very fragile at only 130 HP, and your attacks are never doing a lot of damage, because this Garchomp was designed to be played against EX Pokemon. So Bite Off is only ever doing 80 damage, or I guess 120 with a dojo, which isn't even that impressive. So yeah, it's a cool card. I like being able to use this guy sometimes, but truth be told, it's just a very bad card. However, now we can talk about the good Garchomps. So the next Garchomps are a bit of a strange situation, because they are both dragon and fighting. It's essentially the same card, but just with a different type, which is quite cool. So the dragon one comes from Ultra Prism, and the Forbidden Light one comes... well, I messed that up, didn't I? The fighting type one comes from Forbidden Light. But yeah, the Ultra Prism Dragon Garchomp is still quite useful. I would say it's definitely a bit weaker, well, a lot weaker, than the Garchomp from Brilliant Stars, just because you can pay for the Brilliant Stars one using a double drag energy. And this one does rely on you playing a Cynthia, and unlike the fighting type one, you don't have access to Lucario. Now, the fighting type one having access to Lucario means that you can find Cynthia a lot more consistently. It also means you can use stuff like VS Seeker and Pop-Out more easily to chain Cynthia and do 200 damage a lot of turns, which is very, very cool. You still have the problem of needing 3 different energy, but, it's GLC, it shouldn't be too difficult to pay for this. And still just a very cool card overall. And of course, you can get Dojo involved to either, 90 damage to your opponent's active, or to do 140 or 240 if you really needed to. So yeah, fighting type Garchomp definitely a lot stronger in this situation, and this is the best fighting type Garchomp that we have, really. So yeah, that's quite cool. And next up is we have the other fighting type Garchomp, which is worth talking about. And I know a lot of people prefer this one over the one we just talked about, but I can kind of see why there might be a little bit of a tussle to say which one's actually the better one, because... okay, hear me out for just a second. This Garchomp is cool, don't get me wrong. However, it relies on doing more damage only if your opponent is winning the game, which is good for comebacks. GLC is all about making comebacks, and you'll find that a lot of GLC games, even if one player is winning, it's definitely not possible for the other player to make a comeback and win. And this Garchomp does support that idea, which is very cool. However, the ability only working when your opponent is winning means that Overslice is only ever doing 120, and you have to discard energy. And with fighting types, energy is very important to conserve. You're not getting it back most of the time. You're having to rely on stuff like Raihan and like EXP share or Max Elixir or something if you really wanted to. It's just very awkward. So having to discard an energy, and then hoping, of course, your opponent is carrying Garchomp, I guess, because you don't want to have to keep attaching energy to one active Pokemon, especially non-active Pokemon that's going to be taking damage. So yeah, I just find that this one's just a wee bit too awkward to use sometimes. It's very cool for making comebacks, and it will help you get back into the game, but actually maintaining that victory, if that makes sense, maintaining that rise in the deck, I think is going to be quite difficult if you keep having to discard energy to do respectable damage, because otherwise you're just doing 80 damage, which, we talked about with the Breakpoint Garchomp. That just wasn't enough. So yeah, bit of a weaker one. It's a strange situation. I can definitely see why people think this one is better than the fighting type one that we looked at, but either way, there's still a cool card. But yeah. Next up, though, is we have the Brilliant Stars Garchomp, which is, I guess, undisputed the best Garchomp card in GLC, and this one sees a whole bunch of play in Dragon decks. So 160 HP is the highest you'll ever see on a Garchomp. No free retreat, which is interesting. I personally thought they would give this guy free retreat, but they didn't. But it does have the very powerful ability Sonic Slip. It says when you place a Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, aka Gabite or Red Candy or Gibble, then prevent all damage from attacks and effects done to this Pokemon until the end of your opponent's next turn. So essentially, they have to use one of their Gust resources to get around this guy, or they basically miss out on an attack, which is obviously terrible in GLC. Like, you don't want to have to spend Gust resources when you don't want to. So, fantastic ability to make use of. And then Dragon Blade for water fighting does a whopping 160 to KO pretty much nearly every other stage 2 that's relevant, except like the really, really tanky ones. And you discard the top 2 cards of your deck, which is a bit of a pain in Dragon GLC. It's a bit annoying. However, if you're doing 160, you're getting a few 1 KOs. Definitely worth it for this Garchomp. And you're probably surviving a hit as well, assuming your opponent can't do 160. So you're probably getting at least 2 prizes worth out of this guy, which is very crazy, especially when you factor in Sonic Slip. Like, it's almost all the time you're getting at least 1 or 2 prizes. At the very least, right? Maybe even 3 in some situations, but typically 2. But yeah, very strong Garchomp. Also, I just kind of wanted to throw in this little update. I probably won't do this for every video, but I just wanted to throw in some personal GLC updates. I went and added a Heavy Ball to my Psychic GLC deck, just because I realized that at least 4 of my Pokemon all have a retreat cost of 3. And I was like, wait, Cofagrigus has it, Garbodor has it, Dusknoir has it, and Dusclops has it. So I was like, okay, Heavy Ball has to be added. For some reason, Swalot, which is like a massive spongy Pokemon that doesn't really move much, doesn't have a higher retreat cost and only has retreat cost 2, which is actually really annoying. I really wish it had a retreat cost of 3. But yeah, Swalot doesn't have a retreat cost of 3, but still, Heavy Ball, a very, very powerful item that will help me find out a lot of Pokemon. So yeah, just a minor update for my own GLC deck. But yeah, thanks for watching. I do a new set review for GLC with each new release, so subscribe if you're interested in being updated and you want to see more of these videos, of course. I try and make other GLC videos, but it is difficult to come up with content without involving IRL usually, because I don't have like a proper camera set up and I don't know people who really play GLC. Also, if you want to dive into the competitive side, however, Omnipoke and the format creator, Tricky Jim, who did great GLC if you didn't know, have both done fantastic videos and guides for each type in GLC. So if you're interested in learning more about a specific type, I'd recommend checking out their videos. But yeah, either way, thanks for watching. It's been Empower, and yeah, thank you for watching.